Wasn't here yesterday, so trying to make up for it. Yesterday was Lunar New Year or Chinese New Year, year of the fire snake. Um, I didn't know it was that specific. I just knew it was year of the snake, which is the zodiac sign I fall under the under Chinese astrology. But I didn't know they also paired those 12 zodiac signs with uh, the five elements in in Chinese traditional beliefs, which is I believe fire, earth, wood, air, and water. So it is year of the fire snake as of yesterday. So I wanted to stream yesterday, but got busy. Happens. But in any case, I'm back, and for um, Lunar New Year or Chinese New Year, whichever you prefer calling it, um, I'm going to talk about Chinese philosophy. Something I don't know a lot about, so I'm not going to pretend that I do. But I'm just going to go over the stuff I remember learning and how it basically just talk about how it shaped my journey through martial arts. Okay, and I've broken open my older phone to help me look up stuff. Changed my filter to all messages, so hopefully things will be nice and calm. Hopefully my moderators can make it. If not, I understand. We're all busy folks. And also, I mentioned I am wearing Deadpool again. Also, I received my vintage 1992 Toy Biz Deadpool action figure. So, um, I watched Deadpool and Wolverine for I'm, I guess the fourth time. I saw it once in the theaters, but I didn't see it until September, guys. I waited a long time to see it because I first was going to see it the first week, the first Friday it came out. Missed the showing. It didn't end up going until September, so waited from July till September. But went to go see it live in the theaters. Well, not live in the theaters, but in its theatrical release. Then I saw it as soon as it came on Disney Plus twice, and then again today, so thrice, making it altogether four times. But I wanted to do it because I finally got my vintage Deadpool action figure, and I liked it. Plus, it was like another special thing for me was that it was like my final, like, I think vintage action figure that I was looking forward to receiving. I might buy more, but that was like probably the final one I'm going to get, at least on my wish list. But if I see some, if I'm at a comic convention or anime convention or um, antique store or the comic book store, something like that, I'll probably buy one off of impulse. But that's the last one that's on my list because I had to kind of constrain how much stuff I was buying. Packbox says, "What's up?" Am I the first comment? No, someone else was, but it was a troll, so and I banned him. Kay says, "Hi, bro. What's up?" So again, this is late night philosophy, uh, Chinese wisdom for the year of the snake. In the background, I have some Chinese classical music. I might have to turn it down just to make sure I don't get copyrighted here, guys. So let me just to be safe, turn that down just a tad. It says I'm also K because the one person called PI. Okay. All right. That should be a safe volume so I don't get copyrighted claim for the music. But I have some Chinese classical music playing in the background if you guys can hear it. So while I'm in the festive mood of both Lunar New Year or Chinese New Year and my Deadpool, I'm gonna eat some. Yeah. Um, like I said, I want to kind of talk about Chinese Chinese and East Asian philosophy in particular, but mostly Chinese philosophy. So in any case, let's get right into it. Like I think some one of the big things that separates East Asian from Southeast Asian culture is well, at least like when I say Southeast Asian culture, I'm meaning more of the maritime Southeast Asian countries as apart from the Indochina countries. When I refer to the maritime Southeast Asian countries, I'm referring to like uh, Indonesia, Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei. Um, what's the other one? I think this is that all of them. I think I think that's all the maritime ones. Because Indonesia is so large. Pause. But yeah. Jalen, appreciate it. I don't really respond to another guy saying the L word to me because not really my thing, but I appreciate it. And thanks for the support as well. Um, I don't I like I see people I see the analytics of people watching my videos, but of course I don't know and I can't parse out anyone individually whether they watch my stuff or not. So that's always good. I'm gonna eat these noodles, guys, until I see people popping up or I see any of my mods pop in. By the way, if you see me slurping noodles, pause. But if you hear me slurping noodles, that's actually how you're supposed to eat it over there. You're actually supposed to slurp your noodles to show that that's how you. It show that's telling them that is A is good. So it's not considered rude. So if, I saw it in Japan, like they slurp down their ramen or their udon. So Philanthropist says, "Was hey, what's up? What's going on?" So, like I said, my martial arts journey, it was just kind of inevitable that I would start um, getting into Asian philosophy as well. I'm a bit peakish, so that's why I had to eat something. I had a pretty grueling workout. Like finally got back up at 4:30 in the morning, like I wanted to. That's why I'm doing this early because I'm gonna get off early. Not gonna be any of these more midnight ones or post midnight. Like I've gone all the way to like four, not five, but I think I've gone as yeah, it might have been as late as 5 in the morning once. So I woke up, did a grueling workout. Well, woke up at 4:30, started my routine around 5 a.m. So I'm gonna try to do it even earlier tomorrow. Um, did my run, my martial arts and stuff. Went out, worked, ran some errands, came home, found I got my vintage Deadpool action figure. Um, so then, since I had that, I went on and watched Deadpool and Wolverine again, and then did a second workout with my weighted vest. Did like some working out with my weighted vest, and now I'm here. I What does it say? I might have to put on my glasses so I don't have to squint. Mm. Iron Zena. When she said enjoy your meal, forgot to say thank you. Philanthropist, have you heard that there's a Chinese AI getting popular right now? Yes, I've heard, but I haven't really looked at the news because it really didn't interest me, to be honest. There are a lot of generative AI programs right now competing for the same customer base, so the same market. I use Google Gemini, but people also have ChatGPT and OpenAI, and then there's the Chinese AI app. I can't remember the name of it. I guess it's useful. I don't know. I just haven't looked at the news too much about it because it wasn't that interesting to me. Uh, well, I think one of my mods might be able to pop in, hopefully. Voice Writer 2 says something about remember me. I'm the Dorito Tacos kid. How you been? I'm doing well. I kind of remember, but not exactly. Not too well. Uh, Iron Zena says you work out. Love a person takes care of his body. Keep it up. Oh, thank you. But I don't do it for anyone else. I do it for myself. One, I want to stay fit, and two, I need to keep myself in shape so I can be able to beat up younger men who think they can try me. Because I look young in person from a distance, so they'll try me because they think I'm one of them. So I have little patience for those of the younger generations who have no respect for elders. And I've been attacked by them before too. So I always make sure to keep some EDC everyday carry items on me, which I'll be doing a video on pretty soon. And I stay in shape because half of self defense is just staying fit. Philanthropist says, yeah, I prefer to use ChatGPT. I haven't used it yet. So anyway, let me. Oop, how do I move this thing? Sorry, guys. I got a chat bubble up and now it's in the way. All right. Sorry about that. I had a chat bubble and I couldn't get rid of it. Horse Rider says, so you remember we were talking about liking tacos. I missed you. Okay. Um, I appreciate it. Philanthropist says, I'm always interested to know where humanity is going. Hmm. Anyway, so like I said, yesterday was Chinese New Year, and wanted to delve into that. I said one of the defining things of traditional Chinese education has been learning the Confucian classics. Confucius was, well, that's the Latinized name of the Chinese philosopher and I believe uh, bureaucrat of in the dynastic era of China. I believe his real name was Kung Fu Zhi, and it was Latinized to Confucius because it was probably easier for Westerners to pronounce. Um, and that's been the study of the Confucian classics has kind of been something that's been embedded in the culture of East Asian culture, as opposed to some Southeast Asian cultures, particularly those of the island nations of Southeast Asia, like Indonesia, Philippines, Malaysia, don't really have that same emphasis on the Confucian ideals. Um, Whereas the Indo-Chinese nations do. The Indo-Chinese nations are places like Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, Burma, aka Myanmar, and Mongolia. Sorry. Flamer says not all the youth are the same. I have great respect for the elders. They were the ones who built the world before us, and we will make them proud doing the same for the next generations. I hope so. I think just if there are misbehaving people within the younger generation who make it who make it look bad for the rest of you guys. But of course, I'm I realize that they're not all Gen Z are the same, but I just see that there's a fundamental lack of respect of elders in that generation because a lot of them coming from broken homes where they were taught not to respect elders, especially if they were raised by single moms. Like many of them weren't raised with respect for elders, particularly eld uh, men of elder status, of senior status. Whereas they put a high premium on respect of seniority in East Asian and Southeast Asian cultures. Like often people are referred to by their ranking uh, relative to other people. Like people often get the little joke in Japan about senpai and kohai, but they also have something similar in South Korea and China as well. Even in the Philippines, because I was an older person, they all the uh, the men who are older are often you know referred as what's the word? Why am I forgetting my Tagalog here? It'll come back to me. But they refer to men uh, basically as basically referring to them all as big brother. Kuya. That's I'm sorry, Kuya. Yeah, see, like people see me, younger people they be like hi Kuya, or they say Po. Po is so similar to sir, but they say it to everyone, sort of just like a formal. It's sort of like a formal but endearing term at the same time, just showing respect. They often say Po at the end of a sentence, or sir, or they'll say sir a lot. Not bad, don't call me sir, but then I realize, hey, that's just their culture. So, but often like the younger people will call you Kuya. Captain says hi, Contrarian. What's up, Cat? So, like I said, I'm in full Lunar New Year mode. Unfortunately, I don't have any moon cake. It would be complete if I had moon cake. I don't have any moon cake. But so I'm just eating some noodles with chopsticks in my little in my little Asian dish here. So while listening to Chinese classical music and reflecting on Chinese wisdom. So even though the Confucian virtues are, like I said, something that's unifying with, amongst East Asian culture, particularly the sinosphere being the Chinese diaspora. Um, what gravitated me into East Asian philosophy was probably more Chan Buddhism, which is also called Zen Buddhism, for the, the Japanese term. But Chan Buddhism and Zen Buddhism are the same thing. And there's a lot of martial arts have adopted Chan Buddhism sort of as a martial art philosophy. Philanthropist says they are a very kind culture. Yes. Has his like, share, subscribe, buy, contrarian a coffee, or drop a super chat. Thank you. And don't drop a super chat, I can buy some more noodles. Some people say, well, some people might say, well, just a contrarian, you're eating ramen. That's actually Japanese. Mm, well, it originated in China, and then of course Japan put their own spin on it. But most of these traditional Asian noodle dishes did start in China. They definitely have ramen there, or like the glassy noodles that you often see people eating in Korean dishes, Chinese as well. You'll especially because there's so many different regions and where there's different types of dishes. Pretty much every anything you see within East Asian culture, you can see some version of that food in China. So you will see ramen, you will see those glassy noodles from South Korea. You'll see something like udon. You'll see something like the Thai dishes. So you'll see something like the Vietnamese dishes. Like every region of China has like some corresponding food to all those other different countries that have specialized, maybe where the dishes have become maybe more specialized. For instance, in the Philippines, pancit canton is a favorite noodle dish for people there. And there's many different varieties of pancit and pancit canton. But as the name suggests, it started in China in the Cantonese region. So in the Cantonese speaking areas rather. So like I said, any of those you can find there. Can you guys hear the music in the background, by the way? I tried to make it so you can hear it, but not that the lyrics will be uh, too noticeable, so I don't get copyright claim for it. And I would shout them out, but some of it's not written in English, so I wouldn't be able to do so. I know this is by some artist named Michael Wong. from Rock Records. So that's a nice music video with it too. One of the books on another Asian philosophy I was pretty um, I had an affinity towards is also Taoism, and there's a book about Taoism called the Tao Te Ching. I think that's how you pronounce it because it's spelled with a T, but from my recollection, the T is pronounced more with a D sound. Pause. So, if I'm correct, the Tao Te Ching was written by a disciple of the founder of Taoism. The founder of Taoism was Lao Tzu. Um, I'm not sure if he actually existed or not because some historians claim that his disciple Shang Tzu was actually the founder of the religion. So I don't know. Sort of like how, sort of along the same lines where, with Christianity, some people think that Paul is the actual founder of Christianity and that he invented Jesus. So I don't, you know, I don't know if that's true. But along those same lines, some people, claim that Lao Tzu was a legendary figure and that it was his disciple Chang Tzu, or maybe several people, including Chang Tzu, that wrote this huge, pretty much Bible of Taoism, which is called the Tao Te Ching. So I've read that um, when I was younger, probably like I want to say about 20, damn, like maybe like 26 years ago. And honestly, I can't say I remember most of it, other than a part in it that teaches men how to balance their sexual energy through particular exercises, telling them basically that they shouldn't orgasm because when you do so, you're letting out all your vital energy or chi. Um, I don't know about that one, but it claimed by basically doing a certain exercise to keep from orgasming, that when that fluid is recycled back into the body, it's it is renewing your energy. I'm not joking either, because some people might be like, "What? That's crazy." But oh, I do remember the tacos. By the way, now for the user boyish writer too. I do remember when we were talking about Doritos and tacos and stuff. And I think I was going over my favorite flavors like Cool Ranch and uh, the salsa Rio and all this sort of stuff. I do. So I'm sorry. I do remember now. It took me a minute. Sorry. It was funny. I read a book more on Chan Buddhism as well, but it was written either for or by Japanese uh, Zen Buddhist monks. Feng Shui. Kat says, "What's my views on Feng Shui?" Um, I think it's good. I think it might be interesting for interior decorating, but other than that, um, that's where I would leave it. Maybe as a way of doing interior decorating. But when I'm referring to Chinese wisdom, I'm talking about East Asian philosophy, not that new age stuff. You know I'm not into that new age stuff. I don't. I think all that stuff is hooey. So East Asian philosophy and East Asian religion are great because they it represents what religion could be when before it becomes frozen and dogmatic. I once before talked about one of my philosophy professors who passed away, Dr. Odell, who said that religion is basically frozen metaphysics, and he goes on to explain uh, that when he says frozen metaphysics, he says you take a philosophy that was once fluid and studied by some people under some teacher, and then his disciples become very dogmatic about it, and it's no longer just a way of thinking for them, but it's how things ought to be, and it becomes what becomes fluid. What was once fluid becomes frozen, and so he called that sort of so he called organized religion frozen metaphysics. But he said that he was more partial to East Asian religion because if it's more philosophical, it's not dogmatic like Western organized religions. You can still see the philosophical roots in it. And matter of fact, I mean, it's hard to say whether you want to call it East Asian philosophy or East Asian religion because most of the East Asian religions don't have some huge all encompassing Godhead at the top of it. Now, Indian uh, Hindu beliefs do, but East Asian philosophy doesn't. It was separate from Indian Desi type belief systems. But like I said, when you look at the three big East Asian religions, Confucianism, um, Buddhism, and Taoism, there's still very philosophical roots to it. Um, Someone once explained, and I think this might have been oversimplifying it a bit, but someone once explained that, like in China and these other places, Confucianism may be more something that's taught to the younger people to instill certain virtues in them, and as they become adults, they're more inclined to Buddhism or how to live. And then in older age, they are more inclined to Taoism, which is being, you know, sort of a look at a harmony with nature. So again, I think it's oversimplifying it, but there is a point to that. Calvin says there's so much more to it than that, but okay. Yeah, I'm just not partial to feng shui. It's just new age crap. Yeah, I, I I'm still always going to be a person who has a scientific mindset. So the feng shui is just bullshit. It's pseudoscience. If well, I can't even call it pseudoscience because I don't think it pretends to be science. It's just new age hooey, like all that Deepak Chopra crap, all that other sort of stuff. It's not really been around for thousands of years. Same thing people say about kung fu and other stuff. When you actually look at the how old those things are, they go back a couple of hundred years. They don't really go back thousands of years because a lot of them don't have records lasting like going to that. I'll say several hundred years at best. Definitely like going back to the dynastic era, maybe. But this and then also, even if something is old, that's not a reason to believe it. Like that would be committing the origin fallacy. Like just because some just because some belief is old doesn't doesn't make it more give it more veracity. What gives something more veracity? It's how much it is inclined to uh, truth and evidence. If something can't be supported by evidence, there's no reason to accept it. Cass says the history of feng shui principles date back as far as uh, 5000 BC to the Yangshao residents who lived among the Yellow River in China. Again, 5000 BC, we civilization didn't come about to about 6000 years ago. So I highly doubt that people like again this is the difference between collectivist cultures and individualist cultures. A huge there's not always a huge de- de- uh, deference for evidence based beliefs, including the historical ones. It's hard to tease apart legend from history in a lot of collectivist cultures because they don't put a premium on historical truth. It's more about they put a premium on how it makes how it looks upon the culture. Things that make the culture look good are preferred are preferenced over claims that are evidence based, especially if those evidence based claims don't back a certain narrative that they want to push. Even if feng shui was that old, which is very dubious, it doesn't give any reasons to think that it holds any merit. I don't want someone doing something to me or pushing a belief on me done by a bunch of illiterate sheep herders. Like, no, I want it to be done by people who are at the top of their game in the most illustrious elite schools in the world. That's whom I trust. And again, it's a that's been um, debunked a long time ago that traditional Chinese medicine and stuff goes back thousands upon thousands of years. When you actually look at a lot of traditional Chinese medicine, it goes back a few hundred years, back to the dynastic era, but not 5000 BC. There's no evidence to support that. And of course, there's no evidence to support it because, again, in those cultures, they don't put a premium on their claims actually being supported by evidence. They put premium on their claims supporting a narrative that makes the culture shine. That's the difference between individualism, um, back type values and collectivist back type of values. But traditional Chinese medicine and other sorts of stuff do not go back that far. Like 5000 BC, you're talking about like before ancient Greece. Like no, I really don't think so. Like like were there probably some antecedents to the belief system? Probably that could be true. Like there might be some antecedents to what eventually became feng shui, um, dating back from that time. Like we can look at certain things today that may reach all the way back to the Sumerians. But there's but again, I'm always going to be honest with everyone in my you know viewing my content when it comes to academic and intellectual stuff. Feng Shui does not date back to 5000 BC. It just simply doesn't until there's evidence to show that it does, like independently, publicly verifiable evidence. But again, there's some great stuff about feng shui as far as it being a way of being useful for interior decorating, or you know, remember when the lucky bamboo became popular? I had them. Actually, I had them up until last year when they died off because when I moved to my grandmother's house, I kept them here, and no one kept them watered for me, so they just withered. And I was like, I'm not gonna buy anymore. I'll just wait till I go back overseas and buy some lucky bamboo over there. which is funny they call it lucky bamboo because it's actually not bamboo. This is actually a plant this derived from Africa, which they call lucky bamboo, which is probably a good thing because actual bamboo grows very quickly from what I've heard. Because some people will plant it in their garden just to realize it just took over the whole garden. Um, but like so for one of the things from feng shui is like four is an unlucky number because in the Chinese pictographs, often the number four is drawn the same way as the word for death. So people usually consider anything that comes in fours as unlucky. Now, like I said, how far that goes back, I don't know because obviously people weren't, because obviously Mandarin didn't exist in that form back in 5000 BC. Um, Not even probably Proto Mandarin at that point. And like the earlier you go back, all the different Chinese languages converge onto like um, a, a common ancestor of those languages because some people think that Cantonese and Mandarin, if that's if they even know, are just dialects because that's what we were taught in my linguistics courses as well, that Chinese just has different dialects, not different languages. But even like my professor was like, I don't know if that's true because a dialect is normally something that can be communicable to other speakers of that language, but Cantonese and Mandarin aren't. Like they are not mutually coherent. To like, if one speaker speaks and another speaker speaks it, they won't know what each other is saying unless they also know that dialect of language. Whereas the written form I think is both for both languages, which is why I think they still call it a dialect, only because I think the written form, there's a simplified Chinese and then a more of a long form traditional Chinese written form. And I think both of those are taught regardless of which dialect or language you speak. But there's, like I said, there's Mandarin and there's Cantonese, but there's other ones like Fukian um, and others as well. And even with Taiwanese, which is they speak Mandarin, I think they speak it differently than they do on mainland China. I'm not sure because when I was there, I obviously wouldn't been able to tell the difference between um, mainland Mandarin and um, Taiwanese Mandarin. And I'm also not getting into the political climate of what is what when it comes to those two places, right? But back to the philosophy stuff. Oh, I didn't see. Sorry, I missed a bunch of messages. Kat says during 4700 and 2900 BC, the Hongshan people in northeast China interacted with the Yangshao people where feng shui was incorporated. There are a lot of things that science can explain. It isn't the be all and end all of everything. I believe there is room for multiple disciplines. There is so much that science can't measure. Well, it does, but okay, you believe what you will. Well, here's my answer to a lot of that. First of all, I never, people always say that when they get defensive, but you've never ever heard me say that science explains everything. I clearly don't believe that. And that's nothing that I've ever claimed. People say that just because they can't defend their beliefs. If you can't defend and justify a belief through evidence, then that belief is not worth accepting. That's just what we call critical common sense, which is the backbone of science and philosophy, or science and analytic philosophy at least. The fact of the matter is feng shui does not go to 5000 BC. It does not. It's just there's no evidence to back it. You can, we're not even talking about science. We're not even saying science. We're just talking about evidence. I'm not talking science. I'm talking about just any claim. Any claim that anyone makes about anything should be somehow testable. If a claim, if a person makes a claim about the world that is not somehow testable, then that gives you reason to not accept that belief. that is just critical thinking 101. That has nothing to do with science. Science just takes critical thinking and take it a step and just makes it methodical and systematic. But don't have to have any background in science whatsoever to realize that in being a critical thinker, you should never accept claims that aren't somehow testable. If someone makes a claim that a belief system goes back 7,000 years, when modern civilization didn't exist till about 6,000 years ago. I mean, I'm sorry, that human civilization didn't come about to about 6,000 years ago, and someone's making a claim that a belief system goes before that to before like over 7,000 years ago, and there's no way to test that claim because obviously civilization started 6,000 years ago. So how are you gonna test a claim about that where there's no evidence to dredge up? Like that's like a huge red flag that that belief isn't believable. It has nothing to do with science. That's just using reason. So I mean, it doesn't matter whether you think reason comes through science or through God or whatever. We all are imbued with reason. Reason is one of the things that most that most of the ancient thinkers have thought make us uniquely human is our ability to reason. So even going back to the ancient thinkers predating science, they all in some fashion believed that it was our capacity for reason that separates us from the animals. So let's use that reason and say, what reason do we have to believe that a belief system that 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 a belief system is older than civilization itself? I just don't believe that. And as far as science not being able to measure stuff, that's another red flag for a belief. If something is not measurable, meaning it's unmeasurable, if it can't be measured, meaning it's immeasurable, that's reason to believe it doesn't exist. If someone says there's a invisible gnome dancing on your desk and there's no way to measure it, like can you hear it knocking his little wooden boots against the desk? No. Can you smell him? No. Is he yodeling or doing something while he's dancing? No. Is he casting a shadow? Can you see him? I mean, is there any heat emanating from his body where he would be on the desk dancing? Like, is he displacing? Is he displacing any sort of inertia about him? No. Like, uh, is there any like electromagnetic radiation coming off of him that can be? No. Um, can can the dog or cat see him or smell him? No. Did he push anything about on the desk as he's dancing? No. I mean, if there's no way to measure something, that means that that thing probably doesn't exist. Jaden says, back, hi guys, guess what? He's I'm in Puerto Rico, yippee. That's what's up. He said, anyways, how has it been? Good. Uh, no worry about the typos. I make typos all the time. But yeah, so I don't want to dunk on feng shui. Like I said, I think it's an interesting belief system, but obviously it's not 7,000 years old because human civilization itself isn't 6,000 years old. Now there has been some interesting stuff that came out of some temple remains of in Turkey. They showed the civilization could be much older than 6,000 years. That would be interesting, but even if that were the case, that's in Turkey, in a region that connects to the birthplace of civilization in the type around the Tigris Euphrates Valley, River Valley, and all that sort of area where the first civilizations arose: the Sumerians, Mesopotamians, Babylonians, and then the other surrounding areas around there. And then eventually the people that went and formed Egypt, as well as people who end up in the Indus River Valley of ancient India, and then originally the people around around the Yellow River and Yangtze River of China. I think since 4 streams ago I got muted. I don't remember that 4 streams ago was like over a week ago, so I can't remember because it may not have even been me. It might have been one of my mods. They look out for me because especially a week or two ago, I was dealing with a very annoying troll that kept coming back under numerous aliases. So he kept just churning out different usernames. So I, I can't say because 4 streams ago was like literally over a week ago. So I can't remember every conversation from every stream. So apologies if it was made a mistake. I'll say that. But anyway, so getting back to actual ancient Asian philosophy, because like I said, feng shui doesn't count as Asian philosophy to me. That's a belief system, but it that's sort of like new age and folklore type stuff. That's not really Asian philosophy. When I'm talking about Asian philosophy, I'm specifically talking about Confucianism, Taoism, Buddhism. And like I said, most people who train Asian martial arts at some point are probably going to come across some sort of Asian philosophy. And like I said, the most often one encounter is Chan Buddhism, which is also called Zen Buddhism. Chan Buddhism often correlates with martial philosophy, as many folks, um, as there has been many, you know, ancient martial artists that have used Chan Buddhism as a as a way to um, how I want to put it, like Chan Buddhism has often been a part of um, the classical Asian martial arts, whether we're talking about the Shaolin as well as the samurai. Both have been influenced by Chan Buddhism, and I think because of it teaches you this sort of mindlessness and sort of a way of abstracting from worldly a lot of worldly issues. I can see how that could be useful for the warrior, for the soldier, to be able to see worldly issues as a distraction, and maybe even to see them as not the real world, as opposed to a higher level of being. Um, and it's hard to describe Chan Buddhism without actually destroying it. It's sort of like the Zen gardens that you can buy. Like, I think the most unzen thing to do is to buy a Zen garden because I wanted one back in the day so much. And then the more I actually learned about Zen Buddhism, I was like, this would be very unzen, like buying a Zen garden. Like I was like, that nothing could be more antithetic to Chan Buddhism or Zen Buddhism than buying a Zen garden. But the irony also is it can both be very not uh, very non-Buddhist while being also very Buddhist at the same time. And I really can't explain it because again, Zen or Chan Buddhism isn't meant to be logical. That's not that's not what it aims at. Its aim is for you to reach enlightenment, or what they call in Japan satori. But you're supposed to reach a certain enlightenment not through reaching logical conclusions, but through having a certain insight. Um, Speaking of favorite songs and music, guys, can you hear this in the background? I'm hoping people can hear it, but it's not too noticeable, so I don't get copyright claimed because I don't want to have to take this video down. But this music is actually very melodic. It sounds like something I would hear in like those little old '90s Hong Kong flicks. Doc says, "Good evening, sir. How you been doing?" I'm doing fine, thanks, Doc. Um, oh well, if he said nah, I said, well, if you can't hear it, then that's probably good because that won't get me knocked. Then, like I said, if it becomes if people can hear it too easily, that means that it's like get copyright claimed. But it's very melodic. But since it's music with lyrics, I don't want to play it too loud. Like usually when I'm playing like the lo-fi, I'll play it a little bit louder. But even the lo-fi music will get copyright claim, which is weird because lo-fi music is AI generated music, but it's still there's still people who own the rights to it. So what do you do? So so anyway, like getting back to what I was saying. So like obviously as getting into martial arts, like I got into Chan Buddhism. And again, for people who don't know, Chan Buddhism and Zen Buddhism are the same thing. Zen is just what they call it. This is the Japanese word for it. There's a lot of there's a lot of things that people think are Japanese that originate in China. So, for instance, the Hotei, the laughing Buddha, or the fat Buddha, was originally like a Buddhist monk that was worshipped later worshipped as a deity. He's called the Hotei in Japan, but I think in China he's called the Budai. And I'm probably mispronouncing that. Or the waving cat, the Maneko cat. That's very popular in Japan, but it is also very popular in China as well. The lucky coins. I found out that's not just in China, that's in Japan too, but it's bigger in China. The lucky coins. If you don't know what I mean by lucky coins, I'm talking about this. So I have a lot of this stuff. I'll just show you guys right here. So this is my unfinished Gundam. I still got a lot to work on this Gundam. I made I made the mistake of getting the master grade kit instead of getting the beginners. So you can see my wave Maneki Neko cat, my lion. I don't know what they call them. It's like a cross between a lion and a dragon. They're like sort of guardians. See my little Buddhist beads with the little Shaolin monks surrounding the Buddha, which I got in Bangkok, and that's I like that one because it's the actual kind they would use in their rituals. Because the ones they often sold tourists were like the goofy ones, but that's like the real kind that they actually use in their rituals. But yeah, this is the Hotei, aka Budai. That's some Japanese stuff right there, but we're all about China today. So and oh, so since you guys can't hear the music, this is what I'm looking at. Okay. What's up, Agatha? What's going on? She said, hello, good night, sir. Um, so anyway, I didn't mean to dunk on Cat about feng shui. I was just saying that there's no way that's a 7,000-year-old belief system from a when civilization itself isn't that old. That just doesn't make sense. Um, like I said, the earliest belief systems we have are from the Fertile Crescent, that of the tigers Tigris, Euphrates River valleys, um, where you see parts of like modern day Iraq and Turkey and uh, they call it the 17 region. Anyway, this is where we get the ancient Sumerian religion, the Babylonian religions, Mesopotamian, goes to the Gozerian. um, Babylonian, big difference. If you never watched Ghostbusters, you wouldn't get that. But anyway, getting back. So moving on. So like I said, uh, another big influence on Asian martial arts is Taoism. Right. Kat says there are scientific research papers on feng shui. By the way, maybe something to look into in your spare time if you're interested. I might look into it, but when you say research papers, are these research papers that are peer reviewed? Just because something is a research paper doesn't mean it's peer reviewed in a credible scientific or historical journal. Like there's a lot of stuff that just can be loosely called research, but they don't go through the peer review process. So if it's peer reviewed, I'm more than willing to accept it. But again, I sometimes I'm wrong. People have seen me be wrong here, and I'll come on here and I'll tell people, hey, I was wrong on this or that. So anyone who's watched enough of my live streams has actually seen me self-correct myself when I was wrong. But again, I highly doubt that feng shui dates earlier than human civilization itself. I just doubt that. And again, it's also because it's also of a nature of with traditional Chinese medicine, which was also said to be dating thousands of years ago. But then we find out it's not that old. Traditions, because they always try to say stuff like that. Acupuncture and acupressure and many other types of traditional healing practices date back thousands and thousands of years, and they don't. They date back a few hundred years back to the dynastic era, but they don't date to pre. They don't go all the way back to the prehistoric era or the history of antiquity. They don't go back that far. I'm not ignoring you, but you're not Jaden. I've said this many times. If people aren't talking about my topic, then you gotta drop a super chat. I'm not gonna talk about random stuff that has nothing to do with my topic. When I'm doing a particular topic, I'm only talking about my topic. If you ask me about my favorite music, that's not the topic. That's why I ignored it. If you want me to talk about something that isn't about this topic, then you're gonna have to drop a super chat. Not to be rude, but my topic is East Asian philosophy, well, Chinese philosophy specifically, because again, I'm celebrating the fact that it was Lunar New Year yesterday. So I'm talking about Chinese philosophy because it was Chinese New Year yesterday. I have topics for a reason. Anyway, so like I said, I'm definitely gonna look it up. Um, once I get curious about something, I want to look into it a little bit more. But like I said, I take things seriously. So this is a critical thinking lesson for you guys. This always fits into like talks about philosophy or science or history. So one, like I said, critical thinking 101. If you don't know anything about, if you don't have any specific background knowledge in any particular scientific or technical field or whatever, always just remember this: common sense reasoning is that all beliefs should have evidence to support them. Okay, this is why we say um, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And to put it more generally, like every claim, any claim, any claim someone makes about specifically about the world should somehow be testable. Like this is one thing they will drill into you in science classes, because people will try to speculate all the time, and on the undergrad level when it comes to science. They'd be like, well, professor, what about if we could do blah blah blah? And the professor, usually being trying to be as diplomatic and open minded as possible, would be like, hey, that's cool, but how do we test it? And the professor will keep drilling that over and over, like, that's cool, but how do we test it? And slowly the kids will start to realize, oh yeah, he's not going to take this seriously unless we can somehow test these. Karen says also need to be aware of confirmation bias. That's not what we're talking about when I'm talking about testable. Confirmation bias is what's called selective, is a type of selective thinking. That's what we want to avoid. This is why we seek for independent evidence. We want non, to put it in a very big GRE word, um, we want non-tendentious evidence. Non-tendentious evidence is a fancy way of saying that we want evidence that's not presupposed by the very claim being made. So, for instance, a uh, evidence, like, so for instance, so if someone makes a claim, makes a religious, like a religious claim, particularly like a Christian, a Judeo-Christian religious claim, and then someone says, yeah, but where you get that, where'd you get a source, what's your source for that? And they say, well, look here in the Bible, in Isaiah 1 verses 12 through blah blah blah, it says that that is a that is that is circular evidence. That's tendentious evidence. We want non-tendentious evidence. Tendentious evidence is circular, is presupposed by the very claim being made. You can't use the same source for the evidence of which the claim is being made. So you can't make a claim, you can't make a biblical claim and then point back to the Bible as evidence for that very claim. That is circular. We want non-tendentious evidence, which means we want something that's independently verifiable. This is how modern historical research methods work. Like when they're looking at historiographical research, what historians are doing is they try to find evidence to support historical claims made made by sources independent from that original claim. So if someone says something about uh, Julius Caesar, you don't want to just go back to the people who he who was in his, in his administration writing things about him. That would be tendentious. You would have to go to people outside of his sphere of influence to see them making the same claims. They can independently verify something about him. Well, Jaden, that's probably why you got banned. That's probably why you got timed out last time. I've already said what this topic was about. If you don't like it, then salute. But I'm not going to fit my conversation for you unless you're dropping a super chat. Like, you need to grow up. Oh, and sorry, Jay, I forgot to recognize you. What's going on? Good evening. But the audacity of some people to come onto your live stream and to tell you what you should be discussing. Go do your own live stream and to talk about whatever you want to talk about. Anyway, so like I said, I'm talking about Chinese philosophy because it was Chinese New Year that just passed. If someone's not interested, cool. I don't care. You're not like, if you're not dropping money on me to for donations, then you shouldn't expect for me to talk about what you want to talk about. Period. Blank. But anyway, Cass says, I know, but it comes into research. Well, yes, confirmation bias can be a part of can this researcher bias. This is why research is so methodical. This is why we have certain research methodology to avoid those errors and like they come into play. Then that's also why we have the peer review process that comes into play. Cat, like, yeah, acting it, it you can't argue it both ways. You can't say this that your claims are heavily researched and peer reviewed, and then say, well, research is heavily flawed anyway. You can't have it both ways. Either it is or it isn't. So this is why I'm about to go into my little spiel about how in critical thinking skills we can delve into what is and isn't good research. So again, a researcher who bypasses the peer review process is a huge red flag. That's a huge red flag. Two, people making historical or scientific or technical claims of any sort that can't give independent sources for those claims. Huge red flag. People within a certain community, whether it's a historical community, scientific community, philosophical community, engineering community, whatever, they should have a certain credibility and reputation within that field. It, like, if there's some sort of maverick or lone wolf, that's another huge red flag because things are verified through the community, not just through someone's being this lone wolf or maverick going against the community. Like that's a huge red flag. Um, and even within peer review, like certain domains of research have more heft than others. So, for instance, semantics. You can take one class in semantics and be as well versed as all the experts in the field because there's so little known about the field of semantics. Like once you take a class in logic and philosophy of language, you know pretty much as much about the world of semantics as some of the most prestigious people out there who've gone into all sorts of versions of semantics, whether it's psychosemantics, teleosemantics, so on. Like the less that's known about a field, the less the less uh, the less weight we put upon it. Um, Jay says it's been a while. Happy New Year and Lunar New Year. Thank you, bro. Congrats on the election. Oh damn, has it been that long? No, we've talked since the election. No, we definitely chatted it up since the election. Catherine says, by the way, feng shui is a Chinese philosophy. Yes and no. We're using two different uses of the word philosophy here. When I'm talking about philosophy, I'm talking about like a systematic way of thinking. Feng shui is like a it's folk belief. That's not philosophy in the way that I'm using the word philosophy. It's a folk belief slash new age quasi mystical stuff. That's not what I consider in this regard as philosophy. I'm talking about strictly like Confucianism, Taoism, Buddhism, Shinto, by the way. Then there's also um, um, well, Shinto is Japanese, by the way, so I'm not doing that since it's not Chinese. Um, then there's also the an- ancestor worship, but that again, that's not philosophy. That's like I don't I wouldn't consider ancestor worship. And there's another one, but I don't want to mention it on here because it's it's a controversial one over there. So I'm not going to mention that other system, which is also a traditional system, but I don't classify it as philosophy either. And then again with Buddhism, there's many different forms. I've been concentrating on Chan Buddhism because it's been pretty well versed in martial arts and Asian martial arts. But of course, there's also like Tibetan Buddhism and Theravada Buddhism and all that sort of stuff. And I think that the two different divisions of Buddhism has been, I think, Mahayana Buddhism and Theravada Buddhism, if I'm saying them correctly. And I don't remember which one Chan Buddhism falls under. Cass as well. You can actually, there are some papers that are flawed. There's duality and everything. Yes, there's flaws in all research. This is why science has instituted skepticism within its methodology so that it can be self-correcting. This is the difference between science and also philosophy and analytic philosophy from all other domains of knowledge, is that it's self-correcting it inherently because inherent to those systems of thinking is skepticism, which roots out flaws. So whereas certain individuals or certain communities within the field can um, either be flawed or push bad ideas intentionally, eventually those things get rooted out because science has built into it a methodology of skepticism, as does some forms of analytic philosophy, which was the whole thing of the logical positivists of the early 20th century. The logical positivists almost completely destroyed metaphysics because they found it to be pretty incoherent, um, if not disingenuous. And it hasn't been until recent times that metaphysics has come back as an actual um, like field within philosophy that people can take seriously again through which is, and most of that metaphysics done today is mostly philosophy of mind. But for a long time, metaphysics wasn't considered a serious matter of study in philosophy because the logical positivists show how incoherent a lot of it is. Um, and I don't think there's a duality in everything. That's again a certain way of thinking. It's a very oversimplified way of thinking that everything has a dual nature. I don't believe that. Um, Jay says I'm a dragon myself and brag about it to my Viet laws every year. I keep forgetting you have a Vietnamese wifey. I forgot about that. Yeah, so yesterday was year of the snake, so that's actually my in Chinese astrology. That's actually my birth sign, year of the snake. But it was, but yesterday was specifically year of the fire snake because each astrological sign is also paired with one of the five elements, which is uh, fire, earth, wood, air, and water. So my specific sign was year of the wood snake, I believe, when I looked it up. But yesterday was year of the fire snake. Most people don't go into that specifically. They just say, "Oh, it's the year of the snake." So I say, "Hey, that's my sign." Which at least, luckily, snake isn't a bad thing in Chinese astrology because I thought that was a bad thing. And I looked it up. I was like, "Oh, okay, that's not a bad thing." Says, I think we're going to have to agree to disagree respectfully. Yeah, I mean that's fine. I'm just saying I just know because of martial arts and being an Asian culture that feng shui is not 7,000 years old. That's just not a that's just not a fact. And there's nothing in plus one or or any other credible scientific journal that has ever claimed such, especially when traditional Chinese medicine isn't that old either. It goes back a couple of hundred years, but the claims that traditional Chinese medicine and herbal remedies go back thousands upon thousands of years just isn't true. It's something that New Age people like to believe because they have, and the reason they believe that again is because people think that the older something is, the more esteemed it is. But when it comes to science and medicine, the older something is, doesn't give it credibility. It's actually the opposite, because you want the you want the most up to date things when it comes to dealing with health, uh, health, medicine, fitness, nutrition, all those sorts of things. You don't want something that people were talking about back before they even predating, medicine, predating science, predating scientific, like modern nutrition. That would be more reasons to not trust it, not reasons to trust it. Cass says, I have to go and tend my injured daughter. Have a good one. I hope she's feeling better. Hope she's okay. Thank you, though. What's up, Moonlit? Cass says, if you haven't seen research, how can you make that assertion? Because I know how old human civilization is. I know history. I'm a history nerd. Was gonna that was gonna be my original major before I changed it. Civilization started 6,000 years ago in the Tigris Euphrates Valley, modern day Iraq. It doesn't get older than that. So there's not going to be a belief system from an entire other part of the world that predates human civilization in that part of the world. Doesn't that just doesn't make sense. Especially when writing originated again in Sumeria. Writing started in Sumeria, where we will find the oldest human records, and they invented writing as a form of accounting. Jay says, I'm an earth dragon, even more epic. How to Train Your Dragon. Pause. um, but yeah, of course, Bruce Lee was Year of the Dragon, of course. But Jay says it is truly quote unquote Chinese New Year as opposed to Asian New Year or Lunar New Year. So they're both, but I mean, to avoid, so for folks, to the best way to avoid the controversy of saying Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year, you just talk about Happy Spring Festival, because Chinese Chinese New Year and Lunar New Year are both describe the spring festival. So that's a way of bypassing. Here's the thing: as technically, you could say it's all Chinese New Year because they were the first ones to celebrate it. But as it spread to other regions of East Asia, they formed their own celebrations and didn't necessarily see it as quote unquote Chinese, although technically it is since they were the first ones to do it. Melissa says, I'm a water dog. Jay says, my father in law will not give it to the Chinese. Oh yeah, Vietnamese. Yeah, that's, you gotta remember they fought a war back in the 70s. So there's gonna be some tension between them. By the way, Vietnam won, but they're like three they're like Vietnam is like 3-1, right? Well, no, I think yeah, they're Vietnam is like 4-1 right now when it comes to battles. Like um, they're like Vietnam is like a honey badger. Like they seem small and like you know small and defenseless, but they will tear a new one in you. Melissa's like Thai New Year's in April, Songkran Festival. Yeah, but it's not the same. Like lunar, that's what's like Chinese New Year and Lunar New Year are the same thing. They fall on the same day. They celebrate the same thing. So, like I said, basically it just comes down to know your audience, right? So if you're talking to people, well, this might be hard for Americans since Americans are so ignorant of different Asian people, but obviously, if you're talking to not people who are not, if well, if you know the people are not of Chinese ethnicity, you're safer saying Lunar New Year. If they are of Chinese origin, you should probably say Chinese New Year because some of them also get offended when people say Lunar New Year instead of not Chinese New Year because to them, hey, we started this first, so it is Chinese New Year, and I get that sentiment, right? But again, if you want to play it diplomatically, just say Happy Spring Festival because both Chinese New Year and Lunar New Year both describe the spring festival, right? So that's I think that's the diplomatic way. Songkran is sort of a different thing with the ties, but it is a yeah. But I get what you're saying. Moon says Vietnam hasn't lost a war in over 700 years. I don't know if they haven't lost one, but I'm just saying in recent history, there was the Sino-Vietnam War they won. There was the Vietnamese War with us. They won because we pulled out. Pause. um, um, and then I and I don't know if you want to if what they did with the French is considered a separate war in its own or just the preambles of the Vietnamese War. But again, they kind of kicked the French out too. Like, nah, get the fuck out. So they're like a honey badger, and then women are beautiful. But yeah, this is not to, but to get back to China specifically, like I said, I can see why people of Chinese origin would say, hey, this is not Lunar New Year, it's Chinese New Year because we started this. Whereas I can also see people outside of that saying, well, we call it Lunar New Year because we celebrate it independently of you guys. So I get it. But like I said, it basically just comes down to knowing your audience. If I'm amongst people who are not that I know at least aren't Chinese, I'm not going to say Chinese New Year. Whereas conversely, if I'm around folks whom I know are of Chinese origin, I'm not going to say Lunar New Year. So, but again, getting back to Asian philosophy, like I said, I get what Kat was saying. Feng Shui is definitely a traditional folk belief system of China, but it's not philosophy in the it's not philosophy in the context of the what I'm describing here as a systematic thought, a systematic uh, uh, way of thinking, right? I think it is a and it gets again it gets into me being pedantic about the word philosophy. Like it, some people use the word loosely to refer to any sort of belief system. Someone like from my pedigree who actually is trained in philosophy, we we shudder at people calling anything philosophy that refers to belief system because not every belief system is philosophy. Sometimes philosophy is loosely used to refer to anything as a belief system. You know, because we'll hear it in ordinary speech, like when people say, "Well, that's your philosophy, not mine," or you'll hear people say, "Here's the philosophy of fixing a bike," right? So the term philosophy is often loosely used to refer to any sort of belief system or maybe steps of doing something. But for people actually trained in philosophy, that's not what we mean when we say philosophy. When we say philosophy, we're talking about a systematic a systematic way of thinking with concepts, principles, that sort of thing. Jay says my truth. I hate when people say this. I do too. When people say my truth, they just mean what I believe, because there's there's no my truth. Truth is not subjective, and obviously truth is not subjective because if it were, we wouldn't be able to communicate on. It would make communication impossible if truth was subjective. People don't realize that. They don't. The, as a matter of fact, in the very pursuit of arguing that truth is subjective, they're actually using the tools of reason which presuppose the truth is objective. So it's like it's very funny when people don't realize that, or they do realize it and they just don't care, which means you can't take them seriously anymore. But the principle of bivalence is presupposed by the very concept of truth itself. The principle of bivalence basically says that for any assertion that that assertion has only one truth value, and that truth value is either true or false, which is similar to the principle of the excluded middle, but diff- that's a different principle. That principle is actually presupposed by the principle of bivalence. The principle of bivalence is probably the most basic logical principle in philosophy, logic, math, and in communications, because without it, communication is impossible, logic is impossible, which means philosophy is impossible, science is impossible, and computer science is impossible because computer science is built on um, classical logic, classical bivalent logic. So, and I think some people who tend to be very um, um, who tend to like some of these more eccentric beliefs veer towards the whole subjectivity of truth because it's easier to defend their views if they tell people that, well, the truth is subjective. So in other words, for people who have belief systems that can't be defended and justified, it's sort of a self-serving thing to say that truth is subjective, right? And again, not all, even though a lot of this is prevalent in Western philosophy, again, we can get some of this in the Confucian classics, right? The, there there is a lot of emphasis put on being pragmatic and rational in the Confucian classics. This is something that was taught to many Chinese folks growing up, particularly people of in the uh, higher social stratifications, which is funny because during the Cultural Revolution, a lot of this stuff was thrown away, but at the same time, it was still being taught. Don't ask me how that makes sense. I'm not sure myself. I wish I could have some some people here, either from China or of Chinese origin, that know this stuff that could correct me or kind of add to what I'm saying here. But even during the Great Cultural Revolution, the Confucian classics still became important for a lot of folks, even while some of it was being rejected. And I don't know exactly I don't know how to square that circle. But as I said, if to oversimplify matters, it seems in often in Chinese culture, there's emphasis on the Confucian virtues for children, whereas in young adulthood, there's more of emphasis on Buddhism, and then later on in life, more of emphasis on Taoism, emphasizing the three different emphases those philosophies um, um, put forward. Like I said, the reading the Confucian classics teaches a certain virtues and way of and sort of like value system for young people to to internalize, to be productive citizens. Whereas in adulthood, the Buddhists and knowing how to, basically get around, get I don't know, get through life and be responsible and stuff like that. The Buddhism becomes more important. Then later on in life, as people contemplate their um, their place in their place in the world, and you know maybe they're coming close to the end of their life, they think more about being unified with nature and that sort of thing. Like I said, there's a really great book on Taoism stemming from many hundreds of years ago. I don't know how old it is exactly, but the Tao teaching, some may say it's thousands and puns, thousands of years old. I don't know. Because again, we don't know the historical status of the philosopher and founder of Taoism, Lao Tzu, but some people have argued that it was actually written by his disciple, Chengzi, whom we have more evidence to believe actually existed as opposed to his founder. Again, and kind of in a similar vein to Christianity, where some people say Christianity should just be called Paulianism, and that it's probably unlikely that Jesus himself existed, at least the biblical version of him, but that he was invented by Paul for this belief system that became Christianity. I don't know. I won't take any stance on that here today. Melissa said exactly right. But yeah, I hope hopefully Kat didn't take me dunking on her. I wasn't. I just on my, like I said, I've said from 2 years ago when I first started this channel that I will always be truthful I'll always be very truthful when it comes to intellectual and academic matters. Like I won't pretend something is a good idea if it's not just for a buck. Now, I might pretend a certain clothing or food is good for you guys to get paid. I'll be I'll be honest. Like, if someone wants me to tell you guys that pro, pro wings are the best sneakers ever made, and I'm getting paid to it, I'm gonna say, man, them pro wings are the best sneakers ever made, and I'm about to go hoop in them today. I'm lying my ass off because first of all, I don't hoop. And two, I haven't worn pro wings since I was probably like 12, and I hated them then because they were everyone knew they were like the knockoff Nikes. but but yeah, I'll lie my ass off and say pro wings are the dopest sneakers ever, and I'll tell you uh I don't know, I'll tell you Sonic has the best burgers ever. No, the hell they don't. But I'll tell you they will if I'm getting paid. But what I won't tell you, but what I won't tell you is that um, a certain belief is rational if I don't think it is, or I won't claim that something has has historicity to it if I don't think it does. Now, again, I'm always willing to correct myself if I'm wrong, and I've done it before. So if I go back and find out some information about feng shui and say, hey, this does actually uh, predate Sumerian civilization, and then I'll correct it. I'll come back on here and give a big mea culpa and say, hey, this is such and such and such and such, and I was wrong. And I'll, I've given a couple of mea culpas since I've been doing this channel, guys. So I have no pride in in when I'm wrong, because it's a part of intellectual humility, which is also a part of critical thinking skills, guys. Is having intellectual humility. The best thing you could do is learn that you did something you thought was wrong. So that means you just learned something new. You just became smarter. Shaking Bottles said Buddhism is better. Moonlit, what happened to what's her name? She hasn't been back ever since we you called her out on the sword thing. I want her to come back. I was gonna ask her about it too. But she hasn't been back since you called her out on the sword thing. And I, I'm joking, but I wouldn't embarrass her. I would just be like, what's up? Um, 'Cause and I think she was I think she was a snow bunny too. I think I'm not sure. You because she's from Baltimore, so it's always like 50-50. You can't, you never know. Moonless says Mrs. Moon's mom is Chinese, but she's busy. Oh, okay, that's fine. Um, I I guess I just wanted to ask, like, the question I wanted to ask, if there's anyone Chinese on here, and if people are watching this broadcast on replay, you can still answer this for me in the comment section too, if you don't mind as well. But the question was during the Mao's Cultural Revolution, you know, there seemed to still be a reverence for the Confucian classics, all while at the same time they were kind of being um, um, get just given away, um, done away with. So I was like, I was wondering how that works. Was it because was it more of the fact, like, maybe people within the party decided they still needed to be educated on those things even if they no longer embraced them? Is that maybe how you square the circle? Is that the people within the party, right? Um, Maybe thought, well, we don't want the populace no longer being inundated with these thoughts, but we still should know it. I don't. So I'm not sure how that works. Because for instance, like martial arts, this is another thing you have to kind of square the circle during a Great Cultural Revolution, is that they wanted to get rid of the martial arts because they saw it as a threat, but at the same time, Chairman Mao loved Chinese martial arts, which is why he developed wushu. But wushu took all the what happened was wushu took all the militaristic elements out of Chinese martial arts that went into becoming wushu. But I think maybe it's something similar to that effect, Moon, like where, like I said, the Great Cultural Revolution had made it illegal to practice the martial arts, but again, Chairman Mao himself loved Chinese martial arts, so he didn't want it to be completely obliterated. So that's how he led to the development of wushu. And obviously, wushu is not a practical martial art, but is a beautiful one nonetheless. Which is, what I've said about other martial arts in the past, is not every martial art has to be effective to be worth practicing. It can be just worth practicing just because you like to practice it, like Aikido, which is useless. But um, you know, maybe, like I said, maybe it's something like that where they saw it as a threat, but at the same time, they wanted elements of it to remain. I don't know, because I don't know enough about the culture or the history to make any strong claims about that. But what I will say is that all East Asian culture sort of is unified in the fact that there are certain Confucian ideals within East Asian culture extending beyond China into both North Korea, South Korea, Mongolia, Japan, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, and maybe Burma. Um, but the maritime Southeast Asian countries seem to be the ones that did not embrace the Confucian ideals. So you don't see really an emphasis on Confucian ideals within like Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines and Brunei. And there's another country I keep forgetting. I know I'm forgetting one, but whatever. Also Singapore, but I think Singapore does. I think because the ethnic majority in Singapore are Chinese, that there is an emphasis on Confucian ideals there, I think. But most of the maritime nations in Southeast Asia don't. And I haven't really talked about Taoism as much, but it's harder to describe. Like I said, it's kind of, I think there's sort of an emphasis on universal harmony, and I think it definitely vibes closer to Tibetan Buddhism. Um, I think the yin yang symbol that most people are familiar with, I think probably comes from Taoism. And people often misunderstand the yin yang symbol. They see it as two opposites coming together, and that's not actually what they're supposed to mean. They actually, from what I understood, it was supposed to be they were complementary parts of one whole, and together the yin yang isn't two is one thing representing universal harmony, and that Taoism can often be described um, maybe as by like the flowing of water. And like most East Asian philosophies, there's no like central godhead in it, like in Western religion. There's no one you specifically pray to. Um, but like I said, Taoism is very interesting. That's something you'll find in martial arts culture as well, particularly in Chinese martial arts, traditional Chinese martial arts. Is everyone still here? Did I make anyone's eyes cross? Is everyone still with me? Oh, there. I just had to change my filter. There we go. Uh, there we go. Everyone's back. Shaking bouncers. Oh, we already read that. Sorry. Moon says Thai Buddhism is eclectic. It's remixed with Hindu. Jainism is, I believe, the oldest religion. Mm, I don't know what you mean. If you mean the oldest, you mean the oldest religion in Thailand? Because the oldest religion, as far as we know, dels from Sumeria. The Sumerian religion would be like the oldest religions. That's where we get Gozer the Gozerian. And the the and the keymaster and the what was it, the keymaster and the whatever, everything falls back to Ghostbusters. Melissa says, "LOL, did you just reference lame ass Steven Seagal?" No, I was talking about Aikido in general, not Steven Seagal. I was saying Aikido itself is not a practical martial art, but I wasn't referencing Steven Seagal. I'm saying like the founder of Aikido, Morihei Ueshiba, himself never intended for Aikido to be a combat martial art. He wanted it to be a spiritual martial art. And I was making the analogy to wushu by saying that wushu was never developed to be a combat martial art. The Chinese actually have developed a combat sport, um, which is su, su the Chinese kickboxing style. It was something I was actually going to compete in long time ago, but I left my Jikundo school before I could start training for competition. But Chinese kickboxing called Sanda. But back when I first started doing it, it was still under the older name San. It was developed by the Chinese military. It's very effective martial art. It kind of it combines like traditional kung fu with like Muay Thai and boxing. And unlike Thai boxing, you can actually go to the ground in Sanda. So it would have been very interesting to practice it. It's a very effective martial art out of China because most people think China, they only think of traditional Chinese martial arts. Many of them may not know of Chinese kickboxing, Sanda, aka Sanshou, very effective. Like someone who might like Muay Thai or Left Way or Kun Kimmer would like Sanda. But like I said, Wushu, like Aikido, were never meant to be practical because at the time, during the Cultural Revolution, Chinese martial arts was made illegal. But um, Mao loved traditional Chinese martial arts, so he didn't want them to completely go away. So he had he had his folks put together wushu. Not to mention, and this is even acknowledged on Chinese news, so this isn't controversial. Some of the Chinese masters went on teaching, um, continuing studying and teaching their styles in secrecy, which is how many of them have remained to this day. Or some of them went to Hong Kong where they could still practice them, or overseas. Jay says, "Send it to know I'm Singaporean." I was actually thinking that. I just, I just didn't want to say it because, like, this is my this whole live stream is my mea culpa to YouTube for saying controversial stuff in the past. So this is my mea culpa as well as my way of my own little nerdy way of celebrating Chinese New Year. So, but yeah, I didn't want to get into that, but that was hilarious. That the grilling of the TikTok CEO by Congress 2 years ago. Uh, Mullen says in philosophy, do imagine there can't be light without dark, left without right, up without down, yin and yang. So yeah, so it's just a different way of looking at it. Like I say, when we look at it here in the states, we see yin and yang as opposites, and we say yin and yang, but that's not how they refer to it there. For them, this is all parts of a whole, not they don't represent opposites. Sort of like, I don't know if this is the greatest example, but if you're thinking of the brains, like I mean of the human brain, it has different hemispheres, but we don't think of the left hemisphere as opposite from the right hemisphere. We think of them as complementary parts of one whole brain, which is I think is how they more view yin, the yin yang uh, symbol of harmony. Is that we don't see it, they don't see them as opposites in the same way we don't see the left and right hemispheres of the brain as opposites. We see them as complementary parts of a functioning brain. Jason's got to run and catch you on the next one. Thank you. I need to go myself because it's getting late. 10:38. Uh, but yeah, I'm gonna probably guess like about 6 more minutes. I'm gonna go. Melissa's left brain controls the right side of the body and vice versa. Yeah. So there's parts of the brain that are contralateral. Well, it depends. So there's some parts of the brain that are contralateral, and then there, there are some that are ipsilateral. Contralateral means that the opposite side of the brain controls that side of the brain controls the opposite side of the body. So many of the so for instance, many of our mm, musculature on one side of the body is controlled by the opposite side of the brain. But the interesting thing is that's only true of right of people who are right-handed. People who are left-handed are not all that don't their functions aren't as the same, which is why often in psychology studies dealing with the brain, they would tell left-handed people that they can't sign up for the studies because it's because they got because gives them too many variables they have to control for. So with with right-handed people who make up like 80 something percent of the general population, you have a lot of contralateral control of the body, but in left-handed people, some of those same things can be ipsilateral or contralateral, or a little bit of both. So it makes it harder to control for those sorts of things. And then also to emphasize the point in the yin yang symbol that they're not opposites but complements. This is why within the squiggly part of the white part, there's a circle showing the black circle in it, and in the squiggly part of the black part, there's a circle with the white part in it, showing that these things are opposites. That they are just one has a particular emphasis, whereas the other has another particular emphasis, but they are you know complements of a whole. Moons is wholly dynamic doing that, man. He just blew my mind, no did he? Thanks. But yeah, so I noticed because I'm left-handed, so often I would pretend to be right-handed just so I could sign up for a psychology study and get my 5-10 bucks so I could go eat at the student union. So I taught myself how to write my name and sign my name using my right hand, even though I'm left-handed, just so I could participate in these studies. Because it was often say, hey, for right-handers only for some of these studies, because these were like cognitive psychology studies or neuropsychology studies, and again, if you're left-handed, you're gonna mess up the study because you're giving them things variables they can't control for in that study. Yeah, you said we got softball. Yeah, I've always been left-handed, um, but um, I train like a right-handed fighter though. It's interesting that in Jeet Kune Do, Bruce Lee style, he actually even though he was right-handed, he adopted a southpaw stance for fighting because he thought it would give him an advantage because southpaws fight with a sort of natural broken rhythm that makes it hard for right-handed fighters to keep up with. So it gives you a natural advantage because of the broken rhythm, as well as he like putting his strongest. He believed in putting your strongest side forward, which came from his training in fencing and as well as in Wing Chun Kung Fu, where you usually fought with your strong side forward, since it was since Wing Chun emphasized close quarter fighting, so they put their strong side forward. And again, like in fencing, you put your strong side forward, like your sword hand isn't your rear hand, is your lead hand when you fence. You changed your name, Asia. She's an average Asia. Howdy, y'all. Isn't she a cutie, guys? Look at average Asia, guys. But I'm actually about to go soon. Um, but yeah, I wanted to say more about Asian philosophy, but there's so many things to get into. I probably no, I no, so like I said, I'm a I fight in the I fight orthodox, but I was saying in Jeet Kune Do we actually adopt a southpaw stance, so we put the right side forward. Most people not trained in boxing actually box wrong because they will jab with their right when they're supposed to jab with their left. You, so most it's funny most people who have no training in boxing tend to fight southpaw because they don't know what they're doing until they actually go into boxing training. They find out that in the orthodox style that your power hand is supposed to be your rear hand, not your lead hand. And people don't realize that because they don't know how to fight. They don't know how to box because they don't realize that no, your power hand is supposed to be your rear hand, not your forward hand. But it's taught in reverse in Jikundo that your power hand is supposed to be your lead hand. Uh, so no, so in JKD we kick most of the fighting is from the lead hand and the lead foot, which is your right hand and your right leg. Now, if you go to but if you reverse that in kickboxing and Muay Thai, and even in Jikundo, because in Jikundo there's this emphasis on the stronger side for it, but it it wasn't always consistent because obviously there's times when you want to use your strong, you want to make your strong side your rear leg and your rear hand. But anyway, so in JKD your lead hand, your lead leg is your right side. So your rear would actually be your left leg, your left hand. Um, but if I go into, but if I stand in a, but if I adopt my Muay Thai stance, then then my lead leg and my lead hand is left, but most of my power kicks are coming from the right. Where in Muay Thai they emphasize power kicks over flicky kicks. So like usually the only kicks you really see from the left are like your teep, either your front teep or your side teep, and then or a switch kick. Like the only time you really see like a power kick from the left in Muay Thai is usually when you do a switch kick, unless you are a southpaw fighter. Now Sanchai being the fighting genius he is a right hander who adopted a southpaw stance to give him an edge in fighting. So he is actually a right-handed fighter, but he fights in a southpaw fighting style. I won't say Sugar Shane O'Malley is a beast, and he's both. He's trained here. I wouldn't be surprised. Like he was definitely a long time ago at the top of his game. Moonless his left kick is usually a switch kick, but the leg checks hurt like an MF. Yeah, but it's usually a switch kick, but you can also do a what do you call it? But yeah, usually the left kick is a teep or a switch kick, but or a switch knee. But you can also do a um a patch. What do you call it? A pendulum kick. They also do pendulum. We'll do a pendulum kick with the left. And as you use kind of use the pendulum kick as a feeler. Pause. It's usually just like the teep. The pendulum kick can be used as a setup for a more powerful technique. But anywho, I'm gone, guys. It's late, and I wanted to go into more specifics about philosophy, but kind of got caught up talking about feng shui, which again is a traditional Chinese belief system, but wasn't Chinese philosophy in the context of what I was referring to when I meant like sort of like a systematic thought system that has evolved over time pretty um, with like important figureheads as the founders of those systems. Like I said, for Confucian thinking, it was Confucius, aka Kung Fu Shi. For Taoism, it was Laoshi, and and for Buddhism, it was Siddhartha Gautama, which was in India, but I, the martial. But the funny thing is, Buddhism blossomed more in East Asia than it did in India. So, which you know, interesting. But yeah, I think it's safe to say that Buddhism blossomed more in China and the rest of East Asia than it did in India itself, since it was swallowed up, pause, by other older religions like Hinduism and stuff. Hinduism, Sikhism, Jainism, as well as Islam. So that's going to be the conclusion of this, guys. But people have more, they can leave it in the comments or email me. And like I said, true to my word, I'm going to look up that stuff that Catherine told me. Not today, though, because I'm about to go to bed. So I'm about to get scrubbed up and go to bed because it's past my bedtime. Appreciate you guys. Thank you for everyone checking in. Sorry that Jaden f- fell out of interest with the topic, but again, you don't. It, he's a good guy, but he's obviously a kid, and thinking you're gonna come and tell a content creator what he's to live stream about, but you're not dropping any coins on him is pretty bold. Because I mean, in any other live stream, the content creator wouldn't have even acknowledged him, and I did ignore him for a while, and then I told him why. So I kind of get the hint of why he got timed out last week for because he was probably off. He was probably saying something out of pocket. So be it. But if he decides to come back, he's welcome. But again, if I have a topic, that's what I'm talking about. All right, guys. Well, again, happy New Year to everyone. Gong Hai Fat Choi. I, I know I butchered that. If I have any, again, if I have anyone watching this on replay who speaks Chinese, who was of Chinese ethnicity and want to correct me on anything I said, I welcome it because I'd love to know more. Bye, Asia. Have a good evening or day, depending on where you are. All right, guys. Talk to you later.